I was halfway through the sky before I realized I was flying in the wrong direction, not just from my intended destination, but from the life I thought I knew. My daughter-in-law had made the booking. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. My name is Alice Monroe. I am 73 years old. I've never been good with technology, and after my husband passed, I leaned more heavily on my son and his wife, Karen. She was always the organized one, the planner, the fixer, or so I thought. It began with a suggestion that didn't seem out of place. "You've worked so hard raising Peter, helping with the kids," Karen said one evening as she handed me a cup of chamomile tea. "You deserve a break. Why not visit your sister in Oregon?" It had been years since I'd seen Julia. My arthritis had worsened, and travel was hard. But Karen smiled so warmly, and my son Peter nodded in agreement. "We'll cover the ticket. Just relax and enjoy some peace for a change." Maybe I should have seen it coming. The little signs. The way she flinched when I entered a room. The whispers behind closed doors. The way the grandkids stopped running to me when they got home from school. But love is blind when it's clinging to its last root. So I packed. Karen helped. I gave her Julia's address, my ID, everything she needed. She booked the flight. She even hugged me at the airport, a tight, cold embrace, with a pat on the back that felt like a period at the end of a sentence. When I landed, I didn't see Julia's sleepy little town. I saw palm trees, signs in Spanish, and a heat that wrapped around me like an unwanted embrace. Miami. I was supposed to be in Oregon. I sat there in the terminal, gripping my purse, unsure whether to cry or call for help. I didn't even know where I was staying. My phone, an old flip model, blinked a red light. One message. From Karen. "Safe travels. Enjoy the sun. Take your time coming back." I stared at those words for a long time. They weren't a mistake. They were a message, and they rang louder than any scream. She wanted me gone. For the first few hours, I was frozen. I sat on a hard bench, surrounded by rushing people and shouting children, feeling like I had melted into invisibility. An old woman lost in a new world. But something in me stirred, not rage, not yet. A spark, a pulse of clarity. I had survived childbirth, loss, 2 breast cancer scares, and 62 years of disappointment and love braided tightly together. I wasn't going to let one woman erase me. I gathered what strength I had and approached the information desk. The young man behind the counter barely looked up. "I was booked on the wrong flight," I said. My voice shook. "I was supposed to be in Oregon. I ended up here. Do you have a return ticket, ma'am?" I handed him my printed itinerary. He glanced at it and frowned. "This returns not until next month. Out of Fort Lauderdale. One way only. It's non-refundable. Can I change it?" "Not with this fare. And there's no booking under Julia Monroe. Nothing going to Oregon." I nodded slowly. "Okay. Thank you." I stepped away, the facts sinking in. Karen hadn't just sent me away, she made sure I'd stay away. I was stranded. I sat again, opening my purse. I counted $68.32 in cash. I had no credit cards. My Social Security deposit wouldn't come for another 2 weeks. My son's number went to voicemail. I could have cried. Instead, I laughed. A low, bitter chuckle that caught in my throat. Fine. They wanted distance. I'd give them space and something else. Something they wouldn't forget. I walked out of the airport, into the humid breath of Florida, and began looking for a bus. By nightfall, I found myself at a small diner 5 blocks from the airport. It was the kind of place that smelled of burnt coffee and fried hope. I bought a sandwich and a cup of tea. The waitress, a girl with tired eyes, smiled at me without pity. "You alone tonight, hon?" "Yes," I replied, stirring sugar into the tea. "For now." We talked. Her name was Lila. She was 26, working nights and taking care of her grandmother, who had early dementia. She offered me a place to sit until morning in the back corner booth. I could tell she meant it. Kindness, I've learned, often comes from those with the least to give. That night, I slept in the booth with my purse wrapped around my arm and my shoes still on. I dreamed of Peter's 5th birthday, when he clung to my hand and said, "Don't ever leave me, Mama." And I dreamed of Karen, watching me fade from their lives, finally at peace with her neat little world. No, not yet. The next day, I found the local library. They had computers. I sat with a kind librarian named Marcus who helped me log into an old email account. He showed me how to search bus schedules and look up public records. "You looking for someone?" he asked. "In a way," I said. I searched for Karen, found her LinkedIn, her work, her volunteer events, her PDA board photo, a pristine little life, curated like a magazine spread. Then I found her old university profile and the name of a professor she once thanked in a blog post. Dr. Elaine Harper. 2 hours later, I had her email and an idea. Sometimes, revenge isn't fire. It's exposure. By the time the week was over, I had sent 5 emails. To her job, questioning her mistaken abandonment of an elder under her care. To the local elder advocacy group, sharing what happened. To her PDA board, asking how they handled family neglect behind closed doors. To my lawyer in Oregon, who helped with my husband's estate now activated with a fresh power of attorney document I had notarized at the bank Lila drove me to. And to Karen. One line. I landed safely. But this flight isn't over yet. The next morning, I woke up in a real bed. Lila had insisted I come home with her after her shift. I'd want someone to do the same for my Nana, she said. Besides, I don't think you're the kind of woman who takes up space without reason. Her place was small, a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with water-stained ceilings and floral sheets hung up as curtains, but it was clean, warm, and filled with soft, lived-in silence. Her grandmother, Ruth, mostly slept or sat in front of the TV murmuring to herself, but she smiled at me when I entered. Sometimes, the people the world pushes away become a tribe of their own. I spent 3 days there. I washed dishes, helped Lila cook, and sat with Ruth in the afternoons. At night, I used the library computers to track what was happening back home. Karen hadn't replied to my message. Not directly, but I knew she'd read it. How? Because on the 4th morning, Peter called. My heart stumbled when I saw his name on the screen. I picked up, hands shaking. Mom, he said. His voice was tight, unsure, like he didn't know what version of me would answer. Yes, Peter. There was a pause. Where are you? You tell me, I said evenly. Karen booked the flight. I didn't know Mom. She told me you wanted to go early. She said Julia needed you urgently. I closed my eyes. Julia hasn't spoken to me in months. And I never asked to go to Miami. Silence. I thought you were with her. I tried calling, but your phone went straight to voicemail. I ran out of battery the first night, I said. I had nowhere to charge it. Another long silence. She didn't tell me that. Of course not. A beat passed. Then Peter said something that shattered a piece of me. She said it was getting hard. With the kids. That we needed some space. So there it was. Not just Karen's idea. A shared sentiment. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, voice breaking. I should have checked. You should have, I said quietly. I was in an airport alone. I could have gotten lost. Hurt. But no one noticed. Can you come back? I'll book you a new flight. I'll come back when I'm ready. There was a shift, then a small one, but real. He realized I wasn't the woman he'd left behind. I had found my footing in unfamiliar ground, and I wasn't rushing home to play the same role. Okay, he said. Just please let me know where you are. And if you're okay. I will, I said. But Peter, this doesn't end with just an apology. I know. He hung up. That night, I sat on Lila's back porch while the crickets sang, and the air smelled like warm cement and honeysuckle. I thought of my life, the decades I had given to raising a family, holding things together when they threatened to fall apart. The times I'd smiled through pain, or stayed quiet for the sake of peace. And how, now, I had been tossed aside like old furniture no longer matching the room. But here's the thing about women like me. We don't crack quietly. We splinter like glass, loud, sharp, and impossible to ignore. I had a few moves left to play. The next day, I called a journalist. Her name was Rena Torres. I'd found her through a local advocacy site for elder neglect, where she had written a powerful piece about a woman left in a care home by her children only to build a business from her knitting that made national headlines. I left a message. Then another. On the 3rd try, she answered. This is Rena. Hi, my name is Alice Monroe, I said. I'm not sure you'll believe what happened to me, but I think you'll want to hear it. I told her everything. The airport, the wrong flight, the one-way ticket, the email, my son's silence, and what I planned to do about it. She listened, asked sharp, clear questions, took notes. At the end, she said, "Can I meet you in person?" So we met, the next afternoon, at the diner where it had all started. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, but sharp-eyed and calm. She didn't try to make me a victim. She didn't apologize on behalf of the world. She just listened and promised to tell the truth. 2 weeks later, the article dropped. Left Behind: How One Woman Turned a Family Betrayal into a Wake-Up Call for Millions. It went viral overnight. People recognized me. The photo Rena had taken outside the diner showed me in my worn coat, holding a folded bus schedule, with Ruth's dog perched on my lap. I looked tired, but strong. Karen didn't speak to the press. Peter did. A short, trembling statement. My mother is one of the strongest people I know. What happened to her was not a reflection of who she is, but of how we failed to value her. I'm deeply sorry. We are working to make things right. But it was too late for neat endings. The PTA board dropped Karen. Her job, a nonprofit that focused on family wellness, issued a review. One of the advocacy groups I'd emailed reached out to me for a keynote talk. They paid for my hotel and my new dress. I stood in front of 400 people and told them how easy it is to forget the ones who raised us, and how cruel that forgetting can be. They cried and clapped, but more than that, they listened. 2 months later, I returned home. Peter met me at the airport, alone. He looked older, tired, like a man who had lived 2 lifetimes in the space of a season. "Mom," he said as he reached for my bag. I let him carry it, but I didn't hug him. Not yet. At the house, the kids ran to me. Karen wasn't there. "She's staying with her sister," Peter said. "She thought it was better." I nodded. "Maybe it is." We didn't say much that night. I stayed in my old room. They hadn't touched it. In the morning, I made pancakes for the grandkids and walked them to school. My knees ached, but my heart didn't. Later, Peter sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "Then don't try to fix it," I replied. "Just own it and do better." He nodded, and for the first time in months, I believed he meant it. As for Karen, she never apologized. Not once. But that's all right. Some lessons don't need forgiveness to matter. I'm not a perfect mother. I've made mistakes, been too stern, too quiet, too accommodating. But I was there. And now, I'm here, on my own terms. I started a blog, with Lila's help. It's called Not Dead Yet: Tales from a Woman Who Refused to Disappear. We talk about aging, invisibility, and claiming space when the world tries to shrink you. I have thousands of readers now. And sometimes, when I sit by the window with my tea, I smile because I know I didn't just survive what they did to me. I transformed it into something they'll never forget. 2 weeks after I returned home, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter in careful, rigid strokes. It was from Julia. "Dear Alice, I read the article. I had no idea what you'd been going through. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. If you ever want to come stay, my door's open. I miss you. Love, Jay." I read that letter 5 times in one sitting, and something inside me, a part that had hardened, calcified over years of silence and distance, began to soften. I had isolated myself too, in ways I never fully understood until Karen forced me to look. When you spend decades being everything to everyone, sometimes you forget how to just be yourself, to ask for support, to lean without apologizing. And I had never told Julia how lonely I'd become, how much I missed the way we used to laugh about our husbands, the children, the mess of everything. I wrote her back, a full-page letter in cursive, like we used to write as girls. And I told her I'd visit. Soon, on my own terms. Meanwhile, the blog grew. By the end of that month, we had over 15,000 subscribers. Lila helped manage the comments and emails. I wrote 2 pieces a week, short reflections on dignity, aging, regret, forgiveness, and grit. One post went especially viral. The flight they put me on. It wasn't about planes. Not really. It was about what it feels like to be dismissed, to be managed, to be inconvenient in your own life, and what it takes to reclaim your voice. The response stunned me. People from all over the country wrote in. Elderly men and women, caregivers, social workers, even teenagers. They shared stories of being left behind, misunderstood, underestimated. One line from a reader in Ohio still haunts me. "Your story made me cry because I realized I've been treating my grandmother like she's just waiting to die." That, more than any interview or headline, made it real. I had cracked something open. But then came the backlash. One morning, Lila came into the kitchen holding her phone like it was a live grenade. "Karen just posted something." I braced myself. She'd finally spoken. Not an apology, not even an admission, but a long Facebook post filled with vague phrasing and polished grief. Families are complicated. Mistakes were made. Sometimes boundaries are misinterpreted as cruelty. I wish my side of the story had been heard before I was judged by strangers who don't know our history. People shared it. Some supported her. Some attacked her. But none of it mattered to me. Because for once, she wasn't controlling the story. I was. Still, I won't lie, it hurt. Seeing her twist things. Watching her try to salvage her image instead of simply saying, I was wrong. Peter asked me not to respond. Let it go, Mom. The damage is done. But it wasn't about damage. It was about truth. So I wrote one final piece about her. I didn't name her. Didn't shame her. Just told the story of a woman who tried to erase an elder and how that elder chose not to disappear. The post ended with this. We cannot force people to feel remorse, but we can choose whether we keep handing them the pen to write our story. I took mine back. And now, I write for me. Around this time, I began volunteering at a senior center. I led writing groups for people over 60, helping them shape memories into stories, laughter into poems, pain into legacy. One woman, Marcia, wrote about the first time she kissed someone after losing her husband. Another, Samuel, wrote letters to his daughter he hadn't spoken to in 10 years and mailed them. People healed, and I healed with them. Sometimes we don't need justice in the form we expect. Sometimes we just need witnesses. People who say, I see you. You matter. You're still here. I wasn't just seen. I was known now. Then, on an unusually warm afternoon in October, Karen came to the door. I was folding laundry. The kids were at school. Peter wasn't home. I heard the knock and opened it without thinking. There she was. Her hair was messier than usual. No makeup. No heels. Just a sweatshirt and old sneakers. Her eyes looked older. She didn't speak at first. Neither did I. Finally, she said, Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in silence at the kitchen table. The same one where I'd taught her to make my apple pie recipe. The same one where she once told me she was pregnant with my first grandchild. She took a deep breath. I didn't mean to hurt you. That's not an apology, I said flatly. Her mouth pressed into a line. Okay, I'm sorry. I was overwhelmed. I thought sending you away would buy us time to figure things out. You treated me like a burden, Karen, not a person. She looked away. I know. I waited. I thought, she said, voice cracking. I thought if you were gone, I could finally breathe. But I didn't realize the kids would cry every night asking where you were. That Peter would barely look at me. That your absence would haunt the house like a ghost. My throat tightened, but I stayed quiet. I was wrong, she said, softer this time. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it to your face. I looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't the woman who patted my back at the airport like she was sealing an envelope. This was someone else. A woman cracked open by shame. I still didn't forgive her. But I nodded. Thank you for saying it, I said. She stood. I won't bother you again. As she turned to leave, I added, Karen? She stopped. You don't get to come back in. But you do get to grow. Don't waste that. She nodded once. And left. I didn't cry. I felt clean. Like something I'd carried too long had finally dropped away. That night, I wrote again. The blog post was titled, What Forgiveness Isn't. It started like this. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not silence. It is not inviting the same knife back into your kitchen drawer. Forgiveness is the decision to stop bleeding for someone else's wound. That post hit harder than all the others. It was shared by therapists, quoted in podcasts, even turned into a short spoken word piece by a woman in Detroit. And through it all, I stayed grounded. Because none of this had ever been about revenge. It had been about returning to myself. One afternoon in early November, Lila drove me to the airport. This time, I booked my own flight. Portland, Oregon. Round trip. Window seat. I even checked in using my smartphone, a gift from my writing group, who thought I needed something that doesn't flip open like a clam. We laughed the whole ride there. You're gonna love Oregon, I told her. The trees are like cathedrals. You can breathe better just standing under one. She smiled. Text me when you land. I'll FaceTime you, I said proudly. Modern woman and all. She hugged me. You saved my life, Alice. No, I said. You just remembered how to live it. On the plane, I looked out at the clouds and thought of all the things that had changed in just a few months. I had been discarded, rewritten, buried. But I came back. And now I was flying not away from something, but toward myself. The flight to Portland was smooth, quiet unlike the chaotic, disorienting one that had landed me in Miami months earlier. This time, no one else had chosen the destination for me. No one had packed my bag. No one had sent me off with false smiles and quiet betrayal. This time, I was in control. As the plane touched down, I felt a pulse of energy in my chest. The kind you only get when you're returning to something sacred. Home, not by address, but by heart. Julia stood just beyond the security gate, holding a paper sign that read, Auntie Alice, still fire. I burst out laughing, and she did too. She looked older, her white hair tied back in a loose bun, skin lined from years of smiling, and maybe a little sorrow, but her eyes were exactly the same, full of mischief and love. We embraced tightly. No awkwardness, no need to pretend. I thought you'd never come, she said. I thought I'd never need to. I replied, pulling back to study her face. But I'm glad I did. The drive to her home was quiet at first, both of us overwhelmed with the weight of time. Her small cabin outside Eugene sat nestled between pines and golden grass. A crooked porch. You'll stay as long as you want, she said, leading me inside. No clocks here. No judgment. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and apples. We had tea in chipped mugs and talked like we were 20 again about boys, God, books, and what it meant to be a woman who refused to disappear. She showed me the garden, the shed, her small studio where she painted sunflowers and owls and elderly women dancing in red skirts. You ever paint me? I asked. Not yet, she said with a wink. But now I will, especially after what you did. She'd read every blog post, even printed them out, and placed them in a binder she called Alice versus the World. You made people feel brave, she told me. Even me. I looked around the house and realized something profound. I'd spent so much time trying to belong inside the home Peter and Karen built that I forgot I once had my own. My own story. My own space. My own rhythm. That night, after Julia went to bed, I sat outside under the stars and opened my laptop. I wrote a blog post titled, Finding the Front Porch Again. I wrote about old roots, second chances, and how family isn't always defined by blood, but by soul who sits beside you in the dark and says, you're still here. And that means something. I ended the post with, I lost my place in one family, but I found my place in another and in myself. The comments came in by morning. You give me hope. I called my grandmother today for the first time in years. You made me cry on the subway. I'm 75 and I feel alive again because of you. A week later, Julia and I hosted a small community circle at her church. 15 people showed up, all over the age of 60, all with stories burning behind their quiet eyes. One woman had been kicked out of her apartment by her son. Another had been moved to a retirement home by her daughter without ever being asked. We sat in a circle, passed around warm bread, and let the stories flow. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't dramatic. It was sacred. At one point, I stood up and said, we're not leftovers. We're not shadows. We are full, living, breathing stories, and we don't need permission to keep writing them. Silence. Then tears. Then applause. After that, the circle met every Sunday. Julia and I called it the Unforgotten. One morning, Peter called. Hey, Mom, he said hesitantly. Hi, I replied. Not cold, just measured. I read your last few posts. I didn't know you were going to Oregon. I didn't think I needed to ask. He paused. I'm glad you did. You sound lighter. I am. He sighed. The kids miss you. We talk about you a lot. I miss them too. He hesitated. Can we come visit? I was quiet for a moment, then said, not yet. Another pause. He didn't argue. Okay, when you're ready. There was a kind of sadness in his voice, but also a respect I hadn't heard before. He was starting to understand that I wasn't just Mom in the way he'd boxed me. I was Alice, a whole person, a woman with her own boundaries, her own healing. And healing doesn't happen on someone else's schedule. By the end of November, I was invited to speak at a statewide aging summit. They flew me out, paid for a new wardrobe. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of doctors, therapists, family advocates, legislators. I told them what had happened. I told them how easy it is to silence the elderly, to call it help, to label it decline. I told them about the wrong flight, the betrayal, the silence, the rage. And then I told them about reclaiming, not just dignity, but purpose. Afterward, people lined up to speak with me. One man cried in my arms. A young woman asked if she could record our hug for her mother. I wasn't just a story anymore. I was a spark. When I returned to Julia's place, she greeted me with a smirk and said, "You're famous." I laughed. "I'm tired." "Well, sit down. You've got 3 interview requests in a box from New York." The box was from a publisher. Inside was a letter. "Dear Ms. Monroe, your words are changing the national conversation about aging, family, and resilience. We would be honored to publish your first book." I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I whispered aloud, to no one in particular. They put me on the wrong flight, and it sent me exactly where I needed to go. That night, Julia and I danced in the kitchen to an old jazz record. Barefoot, silly, free. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a song. Inside, we were rewriting everything. It's strange how quickly life can open up after decades of narrowing. For so long, my world had been confined to hallways filled with toys, dinner plates scraped clean, the slow ticking of a clock waiting for someone to need me. Now I was needed again, but not out of obligation. Out of impact. I began writing my book that winter. Mornings in Julia's sunroom, wrapped in a wool shawl, fingers tapping across the keys with a purpose I hadn't felt since Peter was a baby, and I was scribbling grocery lists while he napped on my chest. The book was called The Flight They Meant to Break Me. Each chapter was a layer. The moment I realized I'd been sent away, the raw ache of betrayal, the quiet rage that turned into resilience, the faces I met along the way who reminded me I still mattered. But the heart of it? It was about becoming visible again. Old age, I wrote, isn't the beginning of the end. It's the sharpening of everything you've survived. The moment when you finally look back not with regret, but with clarity. By February, Karen reached out again. Not directly. Through Peter. "She's been going to therapy," he told me during a video call. "She's reading your blog. She wanted me to ask if you'd be open to meeting. No expectations. Just a conversation." I stared at the screen for a long time. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I'm not ready to reopen a door that was slammed in my face." "She understands that," Peter said. I think she's different." "She might be," I said gently. "But I am too." He didn't push. And I didn't budge. The book launched in spring. We held the event at a small community theater in Eugene. Julia helped me pick the dress, navy blue, embroidered cuffs, something that said present and proud. Lila flew in for the launch. "You clean up nice," she said, poking my elbow. "Don't I always?" I grinned. The room was packed. Chairs filled with people of every age, old women in wheelchairs, young men with notepads, teenage girls clutching copies of my book with sticky notes peeking out. When I stepped on stage, my hands trembled. But my voice didn't. I spoke about abandonment, yes. But more than that, I spoke about returning. Returning to worth. To voice. To self. "We are not burdens," I said, eyes scanning the crowd. "We are blueprints. We are the foundation everyone walks on and forgets is holding them up. But I promise you this, if they forget, we will remind them." When I stepped down, there was a standing ovation. And in the back row, I saw Peter. He had come. Alone. Later, he came backstage and hugged me. Tight. No words. Sometimes that's enough. After the book tour, I was invited to speak at universities. Panels. Even a TED Talk. Imagine that. A 74-year-old woman on a red carpet. Lights in her eyes. No PowerPoint. Just fire and memory. I ended the talk with, "You may outgrow your usefulness in other people's eyes, but never in your own. The world may shrink you. But your story? That always expands." It went viral. Millions of views. Thousands of messages. And one I didn't expect. An email. Subject line: "I owe you more than an apology." From Karen. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit for a day. She said all the things I thought I'd never hear. That she had resented my presence because she was drowning in her own sense of inadequacy. That she felt I was silently judging her when in truth, she was judging herself. That sending me away was an act of cowardice masquerading as order. That she was sorry. Truly. Deeply. Without excuse. And that she hoped, if not forgiveness, I might allow a conversation. Not for her sake, but for the sake of closure. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I closed my laptop and stepped outside. The Oregon sky was low and silver, the trees still, like they were listening. I took a breath. Then another. And realized I wasn't afraid of that conversation anymore. Not because I wanted to reopen old wounds, but because I wanted to put the story to rest. My way. We met in a quiet cafe 3 blocks from my publisher's office. She looked older. I didn't offer small talk. I sat across from her, wrapped my hands around my mug, and said, "I read your letter." "Thank you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. For a while, we didn't speak. Just the clinking of cups and hum of quiet jazz from overhead. Then she said, "I didn't know how broken I was until I saw what I did to you." I didn't flinch. "I know." We sat with that. "I thought," she continued, "if I could just control everything, I'd feel less like I was failing. But you were never the problem, Alice. You were the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw." I took a sip of tea. I didn't want to be a mirror. I wanted to be family. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't expect you to let me back in," she said. But I needed to say it out loud. I was wrong. I was cruel. And I am so sorry. I watched her. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman who sent me away. I saw the woman who was finally willing to sit in discomfort. "That means more than you know," I said. We didn't hug. We didn't plan future brunches. But when I left that cafe, I felt lighter. Not because I forgave everything, but because I finally didn't need to carry it anymore. Today, I'm 75. I live part of the year in Oregon, part in Miami. Yes, that Miami. I've come to love the place that once felt like exile. Because places don't hold betrayal. People do. And I am no longer afraid of people. I still write. Still speak. Still walk through airports with my chin high and a carry-on I packed myself. I sometimes visit Peter and the kids. We don't talk about the past, we live the present. Karen joins us sometimes. We're not close, but we are respectful. And sometimes, that's the most grown-up love we can offer. My book is in libraries now. One is even named after me, the Alice Munro Center for Elder Advocacy. It sits across the street from the diner where I first landed in confusion and pain. Every time I visit, I look at the booth where I once slept scared, humiliated, invisible, and I smile. Because that woman, she didn't just survive. She changed the conversation. You see, the wrong flight didn't destroy me. It rerouted me to a life I never knew I needed, to a version of myself that wasn't small or silent, but roaring, alive, and finally, seen.